name is David Keyes, and I played the character of Rick. That's a good question, actually. I don't know if I remember. It was 100 years ago. It might have been an audition or a casting, I'm not sure. But back in those days, you didn't tend to do as many auditions as you do nowadays. You know, there's a lot of self-taping, all that nonsense nowadays. Tended to happen that maybe they'd seen you in something else on the telly, or maybe your agent recommended you, and I had a very good agent, so they might have taken it on trust. I'm not really sure, though. I don't remember doing a reading for it. I remember getting a script, I think. Yes, I did. Because there was an issue with, I think I turned it down at first, actually, because there was a whole sort of stuff about him having beaten up the girl, his partner. And I think I said that I wouldn't really do a scene where I'm beating up a woman on TV because, number one, it didn't feel ethically right, but also I don't want to go down the local pub and get beaten up for beating up women on the telly because people aren't always that smart about things. But then they assured me that, I remember them assuring me that you wouldn't see that. You know, basically him. I think he's come out of prison and she's kind of got black eye and stuff like that. So it was suggested rather than sort of actual. And yeah, and then I sort of went and did the job. So I don't remember casting for that one. I might have gone in and read. I think they were at 3 Mills, weren't they, at the time? I'm not sure, down in East London, which was where I lived. But yeah, it's a hazy memory now. I think it was only Rick, from what I remember. I didn't go out for one of the regulars. I've been doing a lot of telly. I was very lucky when I left drama school. I was sort of in and out of telly a lot. And I'm pretty sure I'd done The Bill before that, which was the first ever series. So that was quite sort of a well received. And I was doing lots of bits in and out on telly. So, but I don't remember casting for any regular. I'm not even sure. Was these episodes I did were in the first series, I think, were they, for London's Burning? I'm not sure. But yeah, no, I mean, I only remember that character, to be honest. But one thing I remember was it was freezing cold. It had been snowing and they had to get rid of the snow because of continuity. So they're brushing snow away all the time. And the lovely wardrobe people had literally put me in this little shirt and a jacket. And I don't think I've ever been so cold, actually. Actually, I've been much colder on jobs since, but at the time, and I remember it being the only time that I actually just could not remember my lines. And it wasn't because I learned them, it's because I was too cold. Yeah, so I think one of the scenes was in the kind of flat where he's come out, and I think Ross's character had found them somewhere to live. And so I was sort of hanging around looking sort of a bit of a toe rag, and he was sort of trying to sort of gee us all up about how exciting it was to have somewhere to live. So we did some interior shots, and we also did some outdoor shots on location. And then, of course, the second episode was the big fight scene. So we did that out sort of on a wall. I think probably it must have been maybe outside the flat where Rick and his girlfriend, which was Ross's character's sister, I think, where we'd moved in, and he came round to have a go at me, and I basically beat him up, I suppose. And then the third episode, I'm not sure where that was, but I know that I then got beaten up. So basically, I beat up the girlfriend, I beat up the brother, and then I get beaten up. That was kind of the beginning, middle, and end of it. But that was on location. So I do remember having cement dust thrown in my eyes by these couple of burly stuntmen who were there to sort of beat me up. And I also do remember, I think I mentioned this before, the stuntman saying, "Don't worry, it won't hurt. I'll pull my punches," and it really hurt. And I just went for it because I was, you know, I felt like I was in a real fight, and I just really laid into this guy. And at the end, I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I just might have gone a bit over the top." He didn't feel a thing. These guys are tough guys, and I cannot fight. You talk stage fighting, of course, so you look like you can do it, but I certainly couldn't do it in real life. He was great, actually. He was a real gent. I didn't know him personally, but we had a lot of mutual friends, so I knew he was a good guy. Oh, he was really gracious, actually, because I tell you what, especially in this fight scene in the second episode, because obviously, you know, I managed to miss him, and I was having to sort of look at sort of pretending to kick him, which I'd sort of stamp the floor instead of kicking him. But I remember one of the other, I don't know if it's an actor or supporting artist, but he actually did give Ross an uppercut. It was quite horrific, actually. He didn't mean to, obviously, and he was very sorry afterwards, but he caught Ross's chin, I think. And I remember, I think one of Ross's teeth actually went through his lip, and it was horrible. And of course, you feel really bad. And Ross was such a gentleman. He was fantastic. He just took it in his stride and said, "Don't worry." Obviously, he wasn't happy about it, but he was fantastic. Yeah, and I enjoyed working with him. It was brief, but he was a consummate actor who was well worth working with. And not a lot of memory apart from the flat, which was quite dingy. I remember sort of there was quite a scene between the brother and the sister, and I didn't have much to do, and I was sort of like just playing with the door handle or something. I don't know. It was one of those sort of moments in the semi-background where you think, "Oh, I've got to do something here." So I was probably sort of looking like I was interested, hardly at all, but about, oh, what a nice door handle, stuff like that. So it's quite a dingy flat. I'm not sure where it was actually. Probably it was. It might have been a studio. I don't know. No, probably not. I do remember we did a night shoot, so that was the fight scene in the second episode, and that was when it was really cold. I think the director was in a wheelchair. I don't know if he'd broken something like that. That was a strange memory, and just shivering a lot. And as I said before, them having to sweep the snow away because it wouldn't match in the timeline with other things. So it was quite a lot of waiting around to make sure it looked right. But then it was just very dingy, and it was sort of, a wall sort of speckled with rain, and the poor guy going down to the floor, and me just sort of looking down at him and giving him a really hard time. It was quite aggressive. I used it years ago in my show reel because obviously it was a sort of, it was topical then, and I looked young enough to sort of have that in my reel, and it was always quite disturbing looking back at it, actually. But the final scene, I don't know. I think it must have been on some kind of wasteland somewhere. I just remember having to sort of kind of run from these guys and getting attacked. But I really don't know where we filmed it. Sorry, my location memory is not as good as the people I work with. I would imagine it was done over a few days, obviously, because some of it was daytime, some of it was nighttime. And because it was 3 different episodes, I can't remember how they did the schedule, because I know when you used to do the build, they'd shoot sometimes, or later times, when the first ones were shot more like film, one camera, wobbly stuff. But by the end, they were shooting 2 or 3 episodes a week, and people were getting on the wrong bus. Pink script on this bus, green script on that bus, and everybody was getting on the wrong bus and going to the wrong locations. With London's Burning, I don't know. I remember it was a real sort of professional sort of setup and everything. It was not unpleasant to work on as far as sort of production and organisational skills went, because that was always good on telly in those days. But I think I must have had sort of time off in between the episodes. It might have been one day a week. I'm not sure. I just remember it being a very confusing time because I'd worked so much the year before. And I've been doing a TV series at Granada. I'd done a commercial, I think. I was in the theatre in Manchester at the Royal Exchange. So loads of things were going on. It was the busiest year, actually 2 years, because I'd done another tour. And then it got to 1989, and I actually turned down a job at Christmas just before London's Burning, and I thought, oh blimey, I'm not going to work now. And this came up, and it was 3 episodes, and I actually think that's probably the only 3 episodes I did that year, but luckily it picked up a quiet time. Yeah, definitely. So it's quite good to do. But obviously it must have been winter, because in those days it did only snow in the winter. Nowadays it can snow in July if you like. Do you know what I mean? So, but I imagine it was sort of early 89 we shot it. But again, hazy memories. Well, that's something I didn't know. I mean, I'm going to be totally honest. I have seen quite a bit of it, but it's not a series I followed all the way through, so I wouldn't be able to keep up with, all the sort of ins and outs of the series. So that's quite interesting. But my stuff was quite limited in a sense. I only really remember Ross, the lady who played his sister, and a couple of guys who were sort of my backup sort of hoodlums, really. So it was a fairly intimate thing. I didn't work with literally any of the other sort of firemen. I didn't see fire engines. I didn't see uniforms. I didn't meet the lovely Kim Tailforth back in those days, if she was in it. I did work with her more recently in a theatre tour, but yeah, so I didn't really know. But I think I knew some of the other actors because of other people I've worked with, because I did things like Birds of a Feather. So I think Pauline and Linda were quite good friends with some of the cast as well. But it was that London set. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you know, everybody was popping up in various episodes of everything else. So you'd either meet on Birds of a Feather, or you meet on The Bill, or London's Burning, or some of the sort of little movies that were being made. So everybody crossed paths. And sometimes as an actor, it's quite easy to go on a job and say, oh, we worked on that, didn't we? And it's like, no, we didn't. We worked on that. Or I know your face from this, but you know my face from that. So yeah, but I didn't really come across any of the major cast. And I think probably because I was on locations, you know, if you're sort of in the main thrust of it all, you're probably meeting in the canteen and, you know, sort of seeing all the sort of works of it. But very often you turn up and you kind of bust out to somewhere. And so you might actually be sitting in a little caravan, or you might be sitting on one of those double-decker buses where they have your lunch and dinner and stuff. So you don't tend to always meet the whole cast, you know. So yeah, that's kind of what I remember. Yeah, well, I mean, Jack Rosenthal was a genius, wasn't he? Especially with comedy as well. I mean, I first knew of him when I saw that film, The Knowledge, about the taxi drivers, and I just absolutely loved it. It cracked up. It was brilliant. I didn't meet him on London's Burning, but I doubt if he originated it. I doubt he was kind of around by the time I was doing it. I did meet him on a few occasions through a very dear friend of mine who's one of the greatest British directors, a chap called Jack Gold. And Jack Gold and Jack Rosenthal were very good friends. And I stayed at Jack's house for a while when I left drama school, and he was very supportive of my career. So obviously Jack Rosenthal was married to Maureen Lipman. So she was Auntie Maureen when she came around the house for tea. But yeah, he was a lovely man, really. And what a great writer. I wish I could name lots of other, I've seen lots of other things that he's done, of course. I can't remember if he had written The Chain that Jack Gold directed. I'm not sure. But certainly, you know, there's sort of, I was very lucky to be sort of meeting these guys. They had a company together, and it was Jack Rosenthal, Jack Gold, Mike Lee, Willie Russell, and another guy, because there was 5 of them, because it was called Quintet. I remember being very honoured to be taken out for Chinese with them after a film premiere, and it was just, I was in my element. I thought I'd really made it, you know, but I was surrounded by the film and TV Grace. Paul Knight, I don't think I might have met maybe at the casting. I've got a feeling I did something else with Paul, but I'm not sure if it was him. I think it might have been The Stretch, which we did for Sky, which had Leslie Grantham and Anita Dobson in, funny enough, but not in their East End characters, but playing a gangster and his wife. That was a really fine piece of work as well. Forgive me if Paul didn't do that, but if he did, well done, and thanks for the job, you know. No, I mean, you know, with respect, it was obviously a really highly respected series, and it went down really well with the public. But in a sense, as an actor, it was another job, if you like, you know, and you're going from one job to the next. So you didn't kind of hang around too much. But I do remember, because I lived in the East End of London off the Roman Road, and I had a local pub where I could drink, because obviously all the locals kind of knew me. I got on well with all of them, and they knew I was an actor. They'd seen me pop up in bits and bobs. But I do remember at the time, you had to be very careful, because millions of people watch these things. And if your face is a little bit known from the telly, especially in your area, you have to be a bit careful for a week or two after an episode was aired. Particularly, I mean, when I'm beating up probably the most popular character on TV at the time, which was Ross Boatman's character. So I kind of didn't go out for a week or two. The issue is that it certainly happens to boxers. If a boxer's in the pub and a drunk guy, you know, has a go at him, it's like, I knocked out so and so, you know, so they've got to be really careful, even though they're tasty, you know. To quote Johnny Rotten about Sid Vicious, I can't fight my way out of a paper crisp bag. So I would not want to leave myself in a situation where people thought I was quite hard because they'd seen the thing and I looked quite tasty in it. and being in a situation where I, you know, could get myself into trouble around those areas, which were quite tough at the time. But I was able to go to my local pub because they all knew who I was. And, but yeah, so that was my kind of main overarching memory of London's Burning, of being like a real toe rag who beats up really nice people. So, you know. Don't believe I had any makeup. I don't think you needed to. Certainly, I mean, I've used makeup in telly sometimes, but mostly they just go for your natural look because that's how you look. Nowadays, I might need to, if I've got the beard, darken it up with a bit of mascara or something, you know, to look a bit younger. Sometimes a bit under the eyes, you know, to not just to make you, but to open your eyes up a bit more. But no, I don't remember using any makeup at all on that. I imagine Ross would have done because there was blood from the nose and the teeth, but mind you, he had his own blood because of the punch. Costume, I just remember being really tatty. You know, he wasn't particularly a well-dressed, elegant gentleman, of course. So, but as I do remember, it was a very thin shirt and a little sort of denim jacket. And since jobs like that, I've nearly always taken my own set of thermals on set wherever I go to have them underneath. Even if you've got a low shirt on, you cut the thermal so at least you can wear something underneath. But that was a kind of lesson because it was absolutely freezing. Yeah, but it was pretty sort of low down the fashion chain what he was wearing, sort of jeans, and I think it was an old football shirt or something, I'm not sure. But yeah, but on those jobs generally, listen, costume and makeup are your best friends. They're the people you want to be with because they're the guys and ladies who sort of look after you, really, to be honest. You know, they keep your spirit up and they protect you, especially on the very big movies, because sometimes they can save your life because you can do some things that are extremely dangerous. And not so much in the UK because, you know, it's always been great. You know, people have really taken care, but I have to say some of the big American things I've done have been quite scary and hairy. So yeah, the costume and makeup people are your best friends. But remarkably, I'm still an actor after about 38 years, I think. So I've been in and out of work all the time, but I've been very lucky, traveled the world, played theatre in Japan and Argentina. I've done movies in the Caribbean. I've been all over. So I've been very lucky. Tough to earn a living, of course, for all of us. So the last 2 years are probably the only 2 years I've not been paid professionally because of course, lockdown. I'm lucky to have, being an older actor, still be on those contracts where you get some royalties in every now and then. So that's kind of helped to keep going, but we all have to survive. But I did have a movie came out just during the lockdown, which was an all Italian crew and production, but it was all British and American actors. And that was called Shortcut. I think it came about 7th in the biggest grossing movies on the first weekend for the simple reason that it was shown in drive-in cinemas because a lot of cinemas were closed in the States. So the drive-ins did very well, and it's kind of action, fantasy, teenage sort of horror piece. So it did particularly well. So that's kind of streaming, but I don't know where because I don't understand any of the channels. Trouble is, an actor now, you do all these things, you can't watch them because you haven't got any of those channels and you can't work out how to get Amazon Prime or Sky or whatever it is. And during lockdown, I've been making a film with a filmmaker and artist called Robert Wren. And I'm not allowed to say too much because it's not, I finished all my filming, but he's now sort of doing all the post stuff and editing and all that stuff. And all I'll say is it's a wonderful piece of work. It's been a real labor of love, virtually zero budget. I play a guy who's in his late 60s, but I also play him in his late 30s. And one of my sons plays him at 19. And it's a fantastic piece of work. It's looking good. I'll just say it's based on a Samuel Beckett play. That's all I'm really allowed to say at the moment. But hoping that'll be ready sort of by mid-end of the year, and we'll see what we can do about getting it out to festivals and stuff like that. Meantime, a couple of self-tape auditions, but nothing's come of it yet. But we'll see. I'm kind of ready to get out there again now. I've been very quiet and kept my head down because I've got kids, and didn't want to. My wife is amazing, works with old people in care homes, so we've been very, very careful not to go too far afield, unless the money's right, of course. But it never is nowadays. Oh, you're welcome. It's been fun. It's lovely to meet you, and send out my kindest regards to all of the London's Burning cast, crew, and everything. And I hope you're all still thriving. And thanks for the opportunity way back when to work alongside you.